All right, so welcome everyone. I'm Zand, and this is the first of many interviews we're going to have with our PGL coaches here for season 18. Our first coach, I'm not saying I'm starting with the best, but our first coach has a ton of accolades. He's a recent champion of the PGL back in season 16, only a couple seasons ago. He captained Canada for the DLWC win, which is a massive achievement, huge dub for Canada. He was first place in the Smog Draft circuit last year, and most important, he is also a believer in both Sinistra and the Dunsparce, which are fan favorites on the channel. So jscurf, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I've been drafting Cine since it was, I think, 5 points. It was the cheapest I ever got it, so I've been a believer. But yeah, I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Honestly, I think you might be part of the problem with why Cine is so expensive now. So I'm gonna blame you a little bit when I have to pay way more than I want to for that thing. Because when it came out, that thing was dirt cheap. Cine is not part of the conversation today unless you want to talk about it in Pokemon that did get picked up. But we're going over the PGL Season 18. It is low tier, it is Nat Dex, it has really dirt cheap Terra Captains, so a lot of creativity, and most of all, that budget was horrific. So I want to ask you, what was your thought process going into the draft? And tell me a little bit about maybe your round one, round two picks, kind of how you were feeling those out. Did you get what you wanted? Did you get sniped? How'd all that go?
Yeah. So for me, this is like on paper, it looks like it's a higher budget than we normally do in this league. Normally, it's like pretty low. But 110 is like a pretty high number, right? So that's not bad. But you actually look at the tier list and you realize once you get below 10, things start to get very inconsistent, borderline unusable for their point total in like quite a few of the tiers, which isn't like necessarily a tiering issue. It's just like it's hard to come by some value. And then once you get to tiers like even like 7, 8, you start seeing a lot of NFEs that are normally like 1, 2 pointers, and it just goes down from there. So I was immediately looking for good value. I was immediately looking for flexibility in my high tiers, and I was also trying to figure out a good way to budget. I ultimately think I did okay with that, and normally I draft quite top heavy. I still kind of did that. I had 4 above the 17 price point, so that is pretty expensive, but I think I made it work. So I think you asked about my rounds 1 and 2. So I was I want to say 9,
Yeah.
and I took Starmie Tinkaton. So Starmie round 1 was always the guy I wanted to round 1. I was saying that before the draft, regardless of my position, pretty much. And maybe in a vacuum, it's not the best thing on the board, but what I valued so much and why I personally had it like first on my board, probably individually, is just because of how flexible it is and how many roles it's actually really good at. So, I mean, I just look at Starmie and I see, well, if you have that as your fastest Pokemon, that's totally cool for your draft, and that's immediately really good. In low tier, being base 115. I also look at it; it's relatively strong. That's immediately your removal covered. You don't need to get another spinner, which is also pretty hard to come by, I would say. So I valued the spin aspect a lot, and then just like in general, I think the base 100 special attack with analytic, like you definitely get away with that a lot more in low tier, where the fact that it has all this coverage, it has meteor beam now, stuff like that, I just think it's really strong offensively. Like you can sort of spin into meteor beam, and that's like a kind of unconventional way to set up, but it goes quite well, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's like a budget quiver dance. That's like crazy. And an analytic meteor beam would just fry a switch in. Like that's really cool.
Yeah. So in the recent draft Premier League, we had a couple Starmies, and in Swish, Starmie's dropped in price a lot recently. This is kind of like a tangent, but it's dropped a lot to becoming sort of like a 10 pointer. And we ran Meteor Beam pretty much every week, and it was incredibly consistent. It got a price increase going into future tournaments now, and it was just really fun, honestly. So I wanted to give it a go. I used it in Oras as well recently, where I liked it, and I figured in this low tier format, it's probably just about as good as those, if not much better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, big fan of that. And then round 2, Tinkaton is like honestly pretty boring, and like I don't know, you don't need to explain that one as much. But I was just looking at the board and I was thinking, if I don't get this Tinkaton right now, I'm just like not gonna have a usable steel. I'm not gonna have a usable fairy either. And at the end of the day, might as well just compress all of that into one Pokemon, just have one really good role player on the team
Hmm.
and sort of go from there. And this checks a lot of the format really well. And normally it's really hard to check some of the dragons in low tier, I find.
Oh, yeah.
So I do really value that a lot, as well as like being good, into opposing Terras, being good into opposing fairies, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I just got a rocker at the end of the day. I got a lot of good utility. It's very consistent. I always enjoy using Tinkaton. And I think in low tier, it's kind of interesting because those like Swords Dance sets are definitely a lot better.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it could have some cool flexibility this season, but it's just kind of a good glue piece I resort to pretty often in standard formats as well.
Oh, absolutely. So honestly, I was kicking myself after the pick got back to you and you got Tinkaton. I was like, why didn't I take that round two? Because I was like, that's probably the best round two pick, or at least one of them. So super good pick there. I think, like you said, Starmie, like it's a little deceptive. Its special attack is like only that base 100. I say only in quotations because that's pretty good in low tier. But analytic really gives it a huge damage boost even without any kind of boosting item. And then that 115 speed. If you look at any low tier draft board, anything above like 110 speed, like I would say, I don't want to say 9/10ths, but a good amount of those Pokemon are really bad and don't really do anything, even if they're fast. So getting a fast Pokemon early that does a lot of stuff. So I think you did a ton of roll compression. Something that I wanted to ask you specifically about. We draft together. We talk draft a lot back and forth in like our group chat. Um, you have this philosophy with draft that I really like. I call it best mon on the board, or I think BMOTB. So you analyze the board objectively instead of subjectively. You, instead of picking your favorites, picking things you like, things that worked in the past, you actually seems like analyze what is the best, what am I not going to get later if I don't get now. So I love that mentality. Did you use that going forward? Like, I know your pick 3 definitely looks like one of those Pokemon that's like best mon on the board. So do you have a little bit on kind of that philosophy and then rounding out your team after that, like kind of how you go about it, your mindset?
Yeah, for sure. So, I've been doing this for, I guess, a longer time than I don't even know. I guess 3 years now, almost 4 years maybe. But I think my philosophy on drafting shifted a lot. A, with our friend group in
Mhm.
PGL, and then again when I started playing in these team tournaments. And when you're dedicatedly drafting with like 10, 11 other people, and even helpers in the server, and then you also have up to 17 drafts per team. You do a lot of drafting, right? And you learn a lot about how people think, and a lot of stuff is sort of like imprinted on me. And something I really like is when you're early on in your draft, I'm personally just trying to get what I think is best.
Mhm.
And I mean, it sounds kind of like silly, like, of course, that's what everyone does. But I more so mean that in effect going on beyond just round one, right? So when people say they're like drafting on synergy and they're drafting sort of things like that, I think that's completely the best way to draft. But I look for my synergy in my later picks and my value picks and my budget picks.
Mhm.
And I think that what I like in a round one, round two, even round three is just like the general carries of specific roles in your team. So like Starmie, obviously, is like your high tier speed and your high tier offense and your removal. And I think that flexibility is impossible to replace. There's no one Pokemon necessarily that does all of those things on the board, at least not quite to the same extent. Like I like your round two Crobat, and it kind of does those same things in a
Mhm.
vacuum, but like,
Yep.
it's a bit different. It's defog, but like, so something like that, again, it's impossible to replace pretty much. And I like that early pick for you as well.
Mhm.
So for me, I try to fill out the roles in the later rounds, and I'm going to look at what I'm missing after I've made my first few picks. So I'm going to say, okay, now I have a Starmie, so that's covering those roles. And next time I'm up, I'm saying, wow, Tinkaton's still on the board. Like, it's impossible to get like a Fairy Steel good, like one-man defensive core. So I'm going to get that, add that to the team. And then eventually I see what I'm missing, right? So then in my later picks, I can say, okay, well, I need Terra Captains. I kind of want an extra speed option.
Yep.
Maybe I want like a breaker on like the physical side and stuff like that. I need another ground resist, and then I fill those roles in as needed. But
Mhm.
at the start, you're taking your centerpieces, right? That's how I view it. You're taking the things you want to build around. So I don't really start worrying about what's missing or what I need to fill until I know what I actually have to build around, and I've taken the best things at my disposal to base my team off of.
Yes.
But that being said, yeah, I'm not just gonna take something because I like think it's objectively good as well. Like I want to have fun here too.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you'll see,
yeah.
like my round 3, I took Diggersby, which I mean I do think it's like the best physical breaker possibly on the board. It's definitely up
Yes,
there
absolutely.
with stuff like Entei and Haxorus. It's in like that level, maybe like 1B, not 1A option. But like I took stuff that I thought would be pretty fun this season. I really wanted to use some of these Nat Dex mons. I think half my
Yeah.
team's Nat Dex, so I am excited to play with it. But I do just try to take what I think is good, then build from there.
Yeah, I think honestly you could probably teach like a master class on that drafting philosophy, because I think it does elude people. Like people see a board, they see something they like that they've used the past 5 drafts, and they go, well, I'm going to use it again even though it's 5 more points on this board or whatever. So really good strategy. Obviously we're not going to go down the whole list of Pokemon, but there's one that I feel like I want to point out, one more that I want to point out. It's just kind of something that stands out to me. People who play low tier know that low tier is absolutely flush with fighting types. There are a lot. There are NFEs, other Pokemon, and you went with a 7-point Pokemon, which is relatively low, as your round 4 pick with Throw, and you made it a Terra Captain. So can you tell me a little bit about the thoughts going into that? Because that is definitely not what I would call like a standard pick. So getting to pick your brain a little bit on what you thought about that, it would be really nice for the listeners.
Yeah, so I think that would fall under what I would call like strategic drafting in terms of like your pick order and your planning. So for me, once I got to round 3, I'd taken 3 high tiers, and I did kind of figure, I'll probably still fit 1 to 2 more high tiers on my team, which I did end up doing.
Right.
But I was looking at the board and I was saying, in between tiers like let's say 20 through 15, like over half of the board is still available, and a lot of them perform similar roles, and I'm going to be able to get something I want in those tiers no matter what. So I'm going to dip into the Terra Captains now, and I'm going to see just who I think is the best on paper. And after looking through some of the things that went just before me, because I don't think I was the first person to take a Terra Captain, although I was one of the earlier ones.
Yeah.
But I looked at what was complex banned, I looked at what was taken. I said, okay, there's a few things I like, there's a few things I don't like. What I think does look really good and also fits pretty well on my team was Throw. So my logic with Throw being good in general was just, obviously this is NatDex, so I do want to try something fun and new. Obviously I haven't used a Throw, so I was like, okay, sure. But I was looking at it, and it fits a lot of what I consider makes a good Terra Captain. It has a good stat spread. It's quite bulky. It's not weak. Like, it's pretty min-maxed if you actually look at it, because its special attack and speed are both very low, and they're not necessarily relevant. So it has the bulk. It's okay strength. And for a Natdexmon, it has a lot of coverage, which I think is very important because I'm not going to be able to use Terra Blast. And then I was also just looking at like the abilities, stuff like that. They're all useful. I can be whatever, immune to Intimidate. I can be Guts. I can be Mold Breaker. Those are all going to have applications. But I can use it as a defensive Terra for sure as well if I'm like running a bulk upset, or I can be whatever, Knock Toxic. I can run Pain Split, stuff like that. But like I thought defensive typing with bulk up looked pretty strong in general. And then I could also just run stuff like, AV. And overall, this is kind of what I prefer in Terra Captain, something bulkier but not passive. So I think it meshed pretty decently overall. I think a fighting type meshed pretty decently with my team as well, helps support Starmie a little bit. So I was a fan of Throw, and ultimately, I was looking at the options. I was like, okay, well, stuff's going to start to go, so I might as well spring something before it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you were, if I looked at it right, you were the 3rd person to pick a Terra Captain. I think Terra Kingler went before, and then I took Terra Aggron before, and then you got Throw when it got back to you. So early, but better to lock in the better Pokemon. And a synergy that I think is really nice on this team too, 3 of your top 4 Pokemon can all knock off, and you drafted a Dark type a little later that doesn't have knockoff. So you have that knockoff covered. You don't need it on your Dark type. So I think that is a great synergy going on. One of many. And so I guess with that, looking less at these individual Pokemon, looking at the whole team, are you happy with how it turned out? Did this all kind of go to plan? I know maybe you were grabbing Pokemon where you're kind of just winging it. Did you have kind of a plan in place? or did you have to pivot at all? Were there any snipes that went on, things like that?
So there was only really one snipe, and I think that's largely in part to how I draft, which is you can't be sniped if you don't have a plan. And I usually did not start looking into my pick until I was like a couple spots away or I was on the clock.
Hmm.
So it makes it harder to get sniped there. The only time I actually planned a draft ending relatively in advance is when I did get sniped, which is when Salazzle got taken.
Hmm.
And I think in some ways my team is better than that plan because I think Moltres Galar fits really well on this team, and I do really like it. I wanted to give it a go for sure.
Hmm.
But like if I had Salazzle, like I mean, it would have been nice for a few reasons to have the offensive fire, to have a good T-Spiker, grounded poison. I do think one of the weaknesses of my team on paper is that I don't have a grounded poison. I ultimately just don't think it matters a whole lot, to be honest, because my team isn't T-Spike weak. Otherwise, I would have gotten some sort of cheap poison later on.
Hmm.
But like, it's obviously not, I mean, ideal, I guess, anyways. Um, but I mean, yeah, I was pretty good overall in the draft because again, I do follow that philosophy where I kind of just analyze the board once I'm up and say, okay, what's the best fit right now, or what's the best mon available? And I think planning is definitely good as long as you know you have multiple options, right?
Yeah.
So I always knew during this draft that with the way the budget was and the board was that I would have plenty of options. So planning felt less necessary. But when I'm drafting sort of in like condensed like 8 mon in like a tournament or a team tournament, that's when I'll plan ahead a bit more. So I know, okay, well, if my speed option gets sniped, like is my draft just ruined and terrible?
Right.
But luckily in this draft, I was sort of just like, okay, well, you know what, no matter what, I will have backups, things will work out. I think for the most part, I'm very happy with my team. I mean, I'm excited to use the Terra Captains. I'm excited to use the high tiers. My low tiers are they're okay. they're pretty funny.
I like them. I like them.
They could go to games at least, so you know,
Yeah.
not the end of the world in any respect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really am liking the looks of your team. Something that I really enjoy, and I think is just incredible in some aspects, is having two Pokemon with opposite attacking styles that have more of an oppressive, like, offensive typing. And to put that into actual words that make sense, you have Moltres and you have the Unpheasant as a Terra Cap, so potentially Terra Flying, or, you know, you could do other types, of course. But having both something that spams Brave Bird and something that's spamming Air Slashes and Hurricanes in a metagame that does not have a lot of good defensive checks to flying types is very strong on its own, and that's not even looking at the top half of your draft. So I think among many things, and honestly, like you said, your low tiers could do great things. I think Grotle and Corsola both have a reason to be brought to games, which is more than you could say about some of those 2 and 3 pointers for sure. So
Yeah. So with some of those low tiers, I don't know, I'll just talk about it for the sake of it.
go
But
for it.
like, yeah, sure. So like with the bird spam idea, that was very intentional. I think if I'm just passing on some wisdom, one of the absolute worst things that draft players do is be afraid to double up on typings, when in reality, especially in something like Tenmon, it's a very good thing to do because I'm always drafting for rolls. I'm not drafting for typing. If I'm worried about something like that, it's resistances. It's not going to be typing based. And in that case, it's like, well, sure, if I need like another ground resist, like, yes, I'll draft a grass type, but I'm not actually worried about doubling up on anything. So with bird spam, it's like, yeah, there aren't realistically that many good steals, and then electrics are usually more offensive in nature. So I did see that as potentially working out quite nicely. I mean, Unfazant, definitely not very flexible at all. I'm pretty sure it can only viably run Stab Terra. But with 115 attack, I mean, with Scarf or Band, I feel like it's going to be relatively reliable as a breaker or cleaner anyways. So it could definitely be usable here in this format. And then, I don't know, even stuff like whatever, Grotle, Corsola, you know, just having an extra option as a rocker in case I need to free up Tinkaton, it's all good. But yeah, I mean, with the low tiers, you know, you're just trying to patch up holes, as I was saying earlier, or kind of exploit something. So, you know, when Cyber tells me, oh, I can't draft this, I already have a water type, and I'm like, bro, there's so many good water types on the board, just do it, you know?
Exactly, dude. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a big thing with draft players when they find their first prep doc and they start throwing the Pokemon in and all the colors light up on what week 2 and how many of each type you have, people get a little panicked when they start doubling up on typings. But I think honestly, it's a good thing to do sometimes, like you said. So I think yeah, it's really strong. So speaking of, you know, other people using type charts, things like that, we've got 15 other teams, well 14 if we don't count other of ours, in the pool this season. I think we play 7 or 8 of them, and then we've got playoffs. So are there any teams other than ours that really stand out to you as strong, and what matchups, I don't want to say scare you, but maybe excite you going into this season?
Looked into many matchups team by team. So for me, it would mostly be players that I'm looking forward to potentially playing.
Yeah.
But in terms of like teams I find interesting, I think we were discussing this earlier, but there's quite a few that I like. I like your team quite a bit. I really like your top 5, I would say, for sure. And then I mean Tauros is good, the terrain idea, or actually no, you don't have terrain, but like the slurp puff idea is really cool. And like I thought Dedenne and Lopunny were both really good value, so I did like your team quite a lot. I think Eltrees has quite a scary team. Rotom Wash Sylveon is like, that's such a like, I don't even know, like Oras type of core, but like it is really good here probably. And like the Terra captains are pretty funny on that team. I was looking at Sawsbuck for a while pre-draft. Once I got into the draft, I sort of got normal type pretty early, but I mean, I got 2 of them, but you know, I kind of fell off my radar a bit. But yeah, I like his team quite a bit as well. And then I forget what else I mentioned. I mean, I like Cham's team. I think that's pretty cool as well.
Oh yeah.
He made some trades, so I think they are reflected in the doc as we speak. Yeah, they are. But that's a cool, like, sort of bulky hybrid team. I'm most curious to see how our good buddy Ha does, because he basically drafted just fat, and it looks really annoying to play.
I know.
And yeah, it looks really annoying to play. Honestly, this league is usually known for having like a couple of people who try to pilot stall, and it's definitely not Ha most of the time. But this is a cool way of approaching it, and it does look annoying to break. We'll have to see if he can break opponents, but I mean, this is the type of team that just does outlast you, and I could see that honestly being quite successful here. And he knows how to prep with that sort of stuff in mind. So I think those are some of the teams I'm excited to play. But yeah, I mean, I mostly just want to play my friends. I definitely want to play Pingu because we've never played before, and I know he would be really excited to do that. So would I.
Really? You guys have never played?
We've never played before somehow over like 5 or 6 leagues we've been a part of together, something like that. The odds of that are incredible. It's like whatever. It's like 1/2 to like the, I don't know, to the 6th or something. Like it's not likely, but somehow that's happened. And then you know, so that's one besides like our immediate friends, like obviously you, Ha, and Cham, that I would be super interested in playing because, you know, it hasn't happened yet, and he has a pretty cool team.
Absolutely. So, yeah, cool. Yeah, honestly, all those are very good call outs. Mine, I swear, I thought you guys were all going to flame me for taking Slurpuff because it's such a bad mon in a vacuum, but I love the rolls it fills. So we'll see if it does anything. But yeah, all great call outs. Definitely a lot of scary teams, and yeah, we'll see what happens. So, a couple of questions left. We're almost done, I promise. We have, looking at the board, a lot of things went, a lot of things didn't go. Oddly enough, the 18-point tier was almost completely unpicked. There's like, I think almost 30 mons in there, and I think 3 of them got picked. I was one of me and you, we each took one of those 2. The only 3 that went. So, of the Pokemon that didn't go, are there any that really stand out to you as Pokemon that you're like, why is this on the board? Why didn't it go in the first couple rounds?
Yeah, there's quite a few, honestly. And I mean, yeah, I'll go from like 20 to 18.
Sure.
But yeah, I think Gator and Hat are both really strong. I'm surprised they didn't go. I wouldn't have taken Mega Sableye, but like again, I would probably expect it to go because you know, there aren't that many Megas available, and you know, filling a Mega slot probably feels pretty nice. I didn't care too much about that, but I mean, I'm just kind of surprised it didn't go, especially with some players here really liking to pilot stally sort of builds. But yeah, I agree with you. The main thing was the 18-point tier, and I think, to be fair, a lot of this tier was not maybe valued correctly, which is part of it. Like there's some stuff like non-sharpness Gallade in this tier. I'm trying to think who else like stands out as maybe not the best value. I mean, probably a little high for like, I don't know, something like brought on Tyrantrum that are sort of just like, they're good breakers, but they're a bit one-dimensional maybe.
For
I don't know,
sure.
something like that. Or like Arctozolt without access to hail.
Yeah.
Or maybe, no access to like full hail. So
yeah, not really.
so maybe something like those, for example. I'm surprised they didn't go. But there's a lot that I'm really shocked didn't go. So like, again, there's removal options in here which didn't go, which is really surprising to me. Like Dawn Fan, you would expect that to go for sure, because there aren't that many good grounds or spinners.
Yep.
Gyarados, I was going to take over Moltres, so I know that thing almost went, but this is maybe like one of the best, I don't know, few sweepers in the tier. So again, that one stood out to me a little bit.
Yeah.
And then other stuff like, for example, Kilowattrel, like that speed is pretty hard to match. Klefki, like same idea as my Tinkaton. It's definitely a bit different because it's kind of less bulky, but like those typings are super hard to replace. A lot of teams didn't get a Steel or a Fairy. So I'm a bit surprised there. And then obviously our GOAT Sinistra is very good in low tier. And Hazard Stack has also proven to be very good in low tier formats, and this is just like the most impossible spin blocker ever.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely a little surprised that didn't go as well. I mean, it's also just a phenomenal sweeper. But
absolutely.
yeah, besides that, I mean, there's also quite a few things where it's like I'm not shocked, but the fact that 18 kind of went untouched besides us is pretty funny, honestly.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. And yeah, my number one call out on this board is definitely that Gyarados, because it's Nat Dex and we're playing cut moves that aren't Hidden Power or Pursuit.
Oh yeah.
So Gyarados gets Power Whip back and it gets Temper Flare back. So it just gets, other than flying coverage, it gets so much good coverage. Like, that's just crazy to me. And yeah, Klefki, I kind of get a little bit because maybe people got a little scared off by no Light Clay. So no more full screens on it. So it loses a little bit of utility. But yeah, I still think, like you said, those types are really hard to replace. So yeah, with that, I think we've kind of gotten through the full interview. If you had any final thoughts, anything you want to say to your fellow coaches before we sign off, you can go ahead.
No, I think it's going to be a fun season. Obviously, we run these a bit less frequently now in this league, but I'm very excited to play here again. I'm definitely going to make sure I make playoffs. You know, I mean, hopefully I'm rocking my new logo that we're using for DCL on Smogon, so hopefully that brings me some good luck here. But yeah, hopefully I get a good schedule. I'm excited because that should come out, I mean, tomorrow as of when we're recording this, right? So,
yeah, exactly. Speaking of that logo, also, I'm going to download that because I'm going to throw that on the screen when you mention it, because that is one of the sickest logos I have ever seen.
I'll send you the file. We spent an okay amount of money on it. We got a really cool artist to do it, but totally worth it. I think it's pretty funny too, honestly. So
nice. Yeah, I love it. I'm super excited to see how you do, how your team does. I have no doubts you're gonna make it to playoffs. I'm gonna be honest. But hopefully I'll see you there. We'll see some other coaches there. And for those watching, thank you for your time, and we will see you all in the next interview.
Peace out. Thank you for having me.